Something has been draining you, and you don't know what it is. You wake up tired, even after a full night's sleep. You make decisions you don't understand. You feel pulled toward things that hurt you, and pushed away from things that could heal you. You've tried to fix it, changed your habits, changed your environment, maybe even changed the people around you. But it follows you. That pull, that weight, that invisible force that sits just outside your awareness and bends your life in directions you never chose. Most people call this bad luck, or a bad mindset, or just life being hard. But the ancient mystics, the Gnostics, the Egyptian priests, the initiates of Solomon's tradition, they called it something else entirely. They said, you are not fighting your own weakness. You are fighting something that has a name. And here is what those ancient traditions all agreed on. Across Egypt, across Mesopotamia, across the early Gnostic mystery schools. The moment you do not know the name of what controls you, it controls you completely. But the moment you know it, everything changes. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear has been hidden from ordinary people for thousands of years. And by the end of this video, you will understand not just what is pulling at you, but exactly what to do about it. Let's go back, far back, before churches, before organized religion, before anyone told you what to believe. In ancient Egypt, the priests of the Temple of Amun understood something that the modern world has almost completely lost. Reality is not just what you can see. Beneath the visible world, beneath the things you touch and measure and explain, there are forces, invisible structures of power that shape human life from behind the scenes. They weren't metaphors, they weren't symbolic. To the Egyptians, these forces were as real as the Nile, as real as the sun, as real as the body lying on the altar. And they had a very specific understanding of how these forces worked. Every invisible force had a true name. Not the name people gave it in public, not the ceremonial title used in temple rituals. The real name, the hidden name, the name that, when spoken correctly, in the right state of awareness, gave the speaker complete authority over the force itself. This was not superstition. This was technology. The most guarded, most dangerous, most carefully protected technology in the ancient world. And it was built on one simple principle. Nothing can dominate you once you know exactly what it is. Now, fast forward. There is a book, ancient, controversial, copied in secret, and hidden in private libraries for centuries. The Key of Solomon, named after the king who, according to tradition, was given dominion over spirits, demons, and invisible forces, not through brute power, not through warfare, but through knowledge. Specifically, the knowledge of names. Solomon's tradition taught that the invisible forces that influence human life are not random. They are not chaos. They are organized, hierarchical, each one with a specific domain, a specific function, a specific influence over specific areas of human experience. Fear, lust, pride, confusion, compulsion. The force that makes you self-sabotage, the force that makes you stay in what's destroying you, the force that makes you push away what would heal you. These weren't just psychological patterns. According to Solomon's tradition, they were entities, each one with a name. And the Key of Solomon was essentially a manual, a precise, systematic record of these names, their functions, their symbols, and, most importantly, the method by which a person who knew the name could command rather than be commanded. Not worship, not fear. Command. This is what the tradition calls the great work, the process of moving from being unconsciously controlled by invisible forces to consciously directing them. And the first step, always, in every tradition, without exception, was knowing the name. Now here is where the Gnostic tradition takes this further than anyone else. Because the Gnostics didn't just say there are invisible forces influencing human life. They explained the entire architecture. They called these forces Archons. And they described them in detail that, when you really sit with it, maps almost perfectly onto things every single person experiences every single day. The Archon of fear, the one that makes every decision smaller than it needs to be, that keeps you playing it safe even when safe is killing you slowly. The Archon of false identity, the one that keeps you identified with a version of yourself that someone else built, your name, your labels, your limitations, so that you never go looking for what's underneath. The Archon of distraction, the one that fills every quiet moment with noise, so the deeper awareness inside you never gets a chance to surface. The Archon of shame, the one that replays your worst moments on a loop and tells you that those moments are what you are. Now here is the critical Gnostic insight that Solomon's tradition also understood. These Archons, these invisible controlling forces, do not operate through brute force. They operate through ignorance. They only have power over what you cannot see. The moment you see them clearly, the moment you name them precisely, their grip immediately weakens. Not because naming them is magic, because clarity itself is the most disruptive force that exists. And what you can name, you can no longer be controlled by. But this knowledge didn't start with Solomon, or even with the Gnostics. It goes back further, all the way to Egypt, to one of the oldest stories in human history that almost nobody talks about in the context of power. The myth of Ra and Isis. Ra, the supreme sun god of Egypt, had a secret name, a true name so powerful that whoever knew it would hold authority over Ra himself. Isis, the goddess of magic and hidden wisdom, wanted that power, not out of greed, out of understanding that real spiritual authority could only come through real knowledge. So she tricked Ra into revealing it. And the moment she knew his true name, the most powerful god in the Egyptian pantheon fell under her authority. This story wasn't told as mythology for children. It was taught in the inner sanctums of the Egyptian temples as a working principle of reality. The highest power in any system is held by whoever knows the true nature of every force within that system. Not the strongest, not the most obedient, the most knowing. This is what the Egyptian initiates spent decades learning. Not prayers, not rituals for their own sake. The true names of every force, visible and invisible, that shapes human experience. Because in Egypt, as in Solomon's tradition, as in Gnostic teaching, knowledge of the name is not just information, it is the key. So let's bring this back to you, right now, in your actual life. Because this isn't ancient history, this isn't mythology. The forces these traditions were describing are active, today, in your life, pulling your decisions, shaping your patterns, keeping you locked inside a version of yourself you never consciously chose. Let me ask you something directly. Is there something in your life you keep returning to, even though it hurts you? Is there a pattern that appears in every relationship, every job, every attempt to change? As if something is running underneath your conscious choices that you can't quite catch? Is there a version of yourself that feels more real than the one you show the world? and something keeps that version from ever fully surfacing. That something has a name, not a supernatural name necessarily, not a name from a grimoire, but a specific, precise, describable nature. And the ancient traditions, all of them, from Egypt to Solomon to the Gnostics, agree on this. The reason it keeps working is because you haven't named it yet. You've felt it. You've suffered from it. You've fought it without knowing what you were fighting. But you haven't stopped long enough to look at it directly and say exactly what it is. That moment of clear, precise naming is what every mystery school in human history has been trying to get its initiates to. Because once you name it, the dynamic shifts completely. Before we get to the solution, and there is a real, practical solution coming in just a moment. If this is landing for you, if any of this is connecting to something you've actually felt in your own life, drop it in the comments. Tell me what pattern you've been fighting. Tell me what you think its name might be. I read every single one. And if this kind of deep, hidden knowledge is what you're here for, hit like and subscribe right now. It genuinely keeps this channel alive, and it tells me to keep going deeper. We are just getting started here. Now, let's talk about what you actually do about this. So what does naming actually look like in practice? Because this is where most people misunderstand the tradition completely. They think naming means finding the right word from a grimoire, saying it out loud 3 times in the right ritual, performing the right ceremony. That's the surface layer of the tradition. It works within its own framework. But the deeper layer, the one the Gnostic masters and the Egyptian high priests and Solomon's inner circle were actually pointing at, was this. To name something truly is to understand its complete nature. Not just what it does to you, but why, when, how it entered, what it feeds on, what makes it stronger, what makes it weaker. That level of precision, that complete, unflinching understanding of the thing that controls you, is what the ancient traditions called the true name. And here is how the Solomonic tradition approached this practically. You isolate the force. You observe it without flinching and without fighting it. You describe its behavior in precise detail, not vague terms like, I have anger issues, but something like, there is a force in me that activates specifically when I feel unseen, that expresses as rage, that quiets when I withdraw, and that feeds on my belief that I am fundamentally not enough. That description is the name. And the moment you hold that description clearly, with no looking away, no softening, no excuses, something in the force itself shifts, because it was built to operate in the dark, and you just turned on the light. Now here is something the watered-down versions of this tradition almost never talk about. Solomon didn't just name the forces to neutralize them. He learned to direct them. This is the part of the tradition that sounds most extreme, but is actually the most practical. The Key of Solomon teaches that every force, every Archon, every invisible influence has a function, a purpose, a domain in which it is not destructive, but productive when consciously directed. The force of fear, when unnamed and unconscious, keeps you small and frozen. But the same force, named and consciously directed, becomes heightened awareness. The ability to read danger before others can see it. The sensitivity that protects rather than paralyzes. The force of pride, unnamed, makes you defensive and closed. Consciously directed, it becomes the refusal to betray yourself, the internal standard that keeps you from accepting less than what you actually are. The Solomonic tradition called this binding, not destruction, not exorcism. Binding, which means taking the force from unconscious domination and placing it under conscious direction. And every ancient tradition agrees on the same prerequisite for binding. You must know the name first. You cannot direct what you cannot see. You cannot use what you do not understand. But once you know it, once you have its complete nature clear in your awareness, it stops being your master and starts being your instrument. So now, let's talk about the solution that the Gnostic tradition specifically offers. Because the Gnostics went one level deeper than Solomon. They didn't just teach how to name the forces that control you. They taught where those forces get their power from in the first place. And the answer was simple. You're forgetting. The Archons, the invisible controlling forces, do not generate their own power. They borrow it from you, specifically from the part of you that has forgotten what it actually is. When you are completely identified with your fears, your patterns, your labels, your limitations, when you have forgotten that underneath all of that, there is an awareness that none of those things have ever actually touched, that's when the Archons are strongest. Not because they overpowered you, because you gave them everything to work with. But here is what the Gnostic masters said the Archons absolutely cannot survive. Gnosis. Direct inner knowing of what you actually are beneath the story. Not belief, not faith, not ritual. Just the clear, direct recognition that the awareness reading these words right now has never once been the fear, the pattern, the limitation. It has only ever been the one watching those things. That recognition, held even briefly, is what the Gnostic tradition calls the way out. Not escape from the world, seeing through the veil while standing right in the middle of it. And the Archons, the forces that needed your forgetfulness to operate, have nothing left to grab. So here is the practical takeaway, the way out the ancient traditions all pointed toward. Not a ritual, not a ceremony, not something that requires years of initiation. 3 steps, simple, ancient, tested across thousands of years of tradition. Step 1, isolate. The next time you feel that pull, that pattern activating, that invisible force doing what it does, don't react, don't fight it. Don't collapse into it. Just stop and watch it from the outside for 30 seconds. This single act of stepping back and observing removes you from inside the pattern and places you slightly above it. That slight distance is everything. Step 2, name it precisely, not vaguely, precisely. Not, I feel anxious, but there is a force in me that activates when I feel like I might lose control of how someone sees me. It makes me want to either perform or disappear. It feeds on my belief that my worth depends on their approval. That level of precision is the true name. Write it down. Look at it. Don't look away. Step 3. Withdraw your identification. This is the Gnostic step, and it's the most powerful. After naming it, remind yourself of this. This force is something I observe. It is not what I am. The awareness that named it is not inside it. The awareness that named it is watching it from somewhere that the force has never reached. Hold that for 30 seconds. That's the moment the ancient traditions called reclaiming your authority. Not over the world, over yourself. And that authority, once reclaimed, is the one thing no Archon, no invisible force, no pattern of forgetting can take back without your permission. Here is where we land. Every tradition we've covered today, Egypt, Solomon, the Gnostics, arrived at the same conclusion through completely different paths. The invisible forces that shape your life are not stronger than you. They are only older than your awareness of them. The moment awareness catches up, the moment you stop, isolate, name precisely, and withdraw your identification, the dynamic shifts. Not permanently in an instant. This is a practice, not a one-time event. But every time you do it, something changes. The force gets slightly less automatic, slightly less invisible, slightly less able to operate without your consent. And slowly, the way a room gets brighter when your eyes adjust to the light, what was invisible becomes visible. What was nameless gets named, and what was your master becomes your instrument. That is the ancient teaching. That is what Solomon knew. That is what the Egyptian priests protected. That is what the Gnostic masters tried to preserve, even when it was being burned. And that is what you now carry. The demons were never more powerful than you. They were only more known to themselves than you were to yourself. Now that changes. If this opened something in you, if something in here connected to a pattern you've been living with and couldn't name, that's not an accident. Drop a comment telling me what you named. Tell me what force you've been fighting. You might be surprised how many people are fighting the exact same thing. If this video gave you something real, hit like, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe. Every like and every subscriber tells the algorithm this knowledge matters. It keeps this work alive. It genuinely means more than you know. And if you want to go deeper right now, the next video is already waiting for you. It takes exactly what we covered today and goes one level further into the Gnostic framework of the Archons, what they are, how many there are, and the specific nature of each one. Because knowing the category of force is one thing. Knowing the specific one that's been in your life longest, that's where the real work begins. Go watch it now. It's right there.